Andromeda, a game that I picked up at Gen Con 2017. You look at the cover of the box, it looks like a 4X game. You look at the back of the box, you see aliens that are moving on a modular board made of different tiles. You think of a tactical combat game, maybe like Doom, the board game. Neither of these assumptions is correct. The game is a Euro game and a fairly abstract one at that. It is one that has all of these nice thematic elements in the components, the aliens, the terrain tiles, etc. But then the mechanics are completely disconnected. They really have no organic connection with the theme. But the theme, since there is one, at least allegedly, it is, well, this big, mysterious, ancient starship has showed up in some unexplored sector of space, and now various alien races are racing to the starship, are racing to explore it and to loot the technology and to perform various missions that, in theory, feel very thematic, but as you will see, are fairly dry and abstract in essence. Let's take a closer look at the game. The play area represents the starship that the players will be exploring, and the starship is made of these tiles. There is this tile that represents the initial room, the entrance, and always goes on the table, and then you draw other cards from a stack. You shuffle them, put them face down in a configuration that depends on the number of players. There's a possible configuration, and these will be flipped face up as players explore them. There also will be technology cards so that the players can activate using game effects. When you activate it, you tap it to indicate that it has been activated that round. And again, we have a deck of cards so that we have different technologies from game to game. With one exception, you always have the teleporter, because that's how you enter the starship. Each player has a race of aliens. The sculpts are all the same, they only change in color, and each player also has a set of 3 teleporter tokens matching their colors. One goes on the board in the initial room at the beginning of the game, 1 per player. Also, there will be a number of aliens that you will have on the board at the beginning of the game, all in that room. Sometimes the aliens get stuck together. They really like each other, I guess. Speaking of aliens and races, yes, the sculpture are all the same, but there are different races represented by these cards here, and different races have different advantages. I like the art. Different effects. You can pause the video and read the effects if you want to get a sense of what they do. And so you will have your own card in front of you, the card representing your race. Suppose it's this one. This is also where you place the aliens that you have trained. Basically, aliens can be in 1 of 3 places. Maybe deployed on the board, they may be available there after they've been trained, and they may be in your general pool. So during the game you will use effects to take aliens from the general pool and put them in the available, and then from the available you teleport them to the board. That is, you place them in an area on the board that has the teleporter token. Other important cards are the mission cards that tell you what you need to do to score points. They come out of this deck here, and they simply describe the condition that you need to meet to score that card and to win, to score the corresponding number of points, which is printed there. For example, if you have 3 aliens in those 2 rooms, that in the present configuration would be that one and that one, 3 here and 3 there, then you get to score that card. Similar thing with different numbers of aliens in different places. You control 3 rooms adjacent to each other, etc, etc. It's this kind of stuff. You control rooms, so you have at least a certain numbers, you outnumber the player here and there. You had the smallest number of explorers on the ship, the biggest number, at least 7 explorers on your race card. That is the one that I showed you earlier, and so on and so forth. Sometimes to score a card, not only do you need to meet the conditions described here, but you also need to sacrifice a number of aliens, which is usually 1. Then you simply remove the aliens and you put them back in your original pool. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it is 0. Now you will have 1 such card in your hand, placed secretly there, and then there will be a deck of 7 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which are called the general mission deck. So here you have a deck from which you draw your personal mission cards, and then there will be the general one. One is flipped face up at the beginning of the game, and it's available to anybody who meets the conditions and is willing to pay the cost. And the player takes a card, places it in front of themselves, and now the player has scored those points. At the end of each round, a new card is revealed and made available from this deck, and the game lasts 7 rounds, 7 turns. That means that this deck of 7 general mission cards also acts as the timer for the game. And pretty much the game ends at the end of this deck, and at the point of player with the highest total points is the winner of the game. It's also possible to win earlier if you score a certain number of points before the end of the game. Then the game ends immediately, and the number of points depends on the number of players. Now, how does the game work? Well, the game works by performing actions that are dictated by these special dice, action dice. In each game, you only use a number of dice, and that depends on the number of players. The active player rolls the dice that are available for that number of players, and then that player needs to offer them to other players using these cards. Numbered from 1 to 4, you only use a number, the number equal to the number of players. Suppose we have 3 players. Starting with the card number 1, the active player makes an offer, so places some of these dice on that card, suppose these dice, like this, and then offers it to the player to their left, which may accept it or reject it. If the card is rejected, it goes to the next player, and so on and so forth, until if it is rejected by everybody, it goes back to the active player that made the offer, and the active player has to take the card. Whoever takes the card takes, well, the card, the dice that are on them, and 1 dice of their choice from the general pool. Once the card is accepted, we move to the next card, and again the active player places die on them, offers it, and it goes around, and again the player that accepts it gets to choose one, and so on and so forth, until each player has a card of this type and some dice. At that point, the actions that can be performed using the dice are resolved in the order dictated by the card. So the player with the card number 1 goes first, and then player 2 and player 3. The dice, what do the dice do? Again, there's a lot of symbols, can be a little confusing at the beginning, but there are these very well done player aids that tell you what you can do. The contamination symbol is bad. You cannot use it to perform other effects that, for example, let you need to consume a die to activate. They simply give your point of damage, that is, they remove one of your miniatures, and that's it. There's radiation, there's contamination leaking everywhere on the starship, and that is the rationale for that. So each of these guys, boom, is one of your people that is gone. However, there is an alien race that actually thrives on having their members dying of radiations. I guess to each its own in the galaxy. That's how it works. So that's where the contamination dice is not an action. It is simply a penalty. Then we have this action here, which is full training. That is, you take 2 aliens from your general pool and you place them on your race card, so that now they are available. That is the 2 brains, that is full training. Then we have call support. That is, you move 2 aliens from your race card to a room in the starship that has a teleporter token. Then we have the improvise, which is either or you can do one training or one deploying, one support. Move. You can make 3 moves with your aliens. They must be made orthogonally from one room to the other, and only in rooms that have already been explored, that is, they're already face up. So you move people around, usually to meet certain conditions, such as, again, having a majority in a certain area, etc., etc. To have majority, to have control of a room, simply means that you have more people there than anybody else. But you can use the move only to move into rooms that have already been explored, that already face up. In order to explore a room, you sacrifice any die, with the exception of the contamination die. So you simply discard that die. You place that tile face up, and you move one of your aliens there. As you can see, some rooms have symbols here. They represent actions or actions that can be performed but while being in the room and controlling the room, or advantages that you have if you control that room. At the end of the rulebook, you have an explanation of what the rooms do. I wish that there was a name for the rooms because somehow these kind of like look very similar to one another, and when you look them up, it's not that easy to identify them. Also, the symbols are not all that visible. I mean, I can barely see that there is a symbol there. Is there a symbol there? I would say no, right? Well, there is one, but you have to look up close. So they look pretty and very thematic, but they're not very readable, these tiles. In any case, something else that you can do in the game is, yes, to use the action that is associated with a room that you control. Back to the actions that you can perform. This symbol here lets you use a technology. So you choose one of these technologies and you simply perform what the card says after you tap it to indicate that that you have used it. This is just to give you some examples. And then that's it, really. These are the dice. This is how you use the dice. So each round is divided in these 2 phases. Dice are rolled, offered, and assigned to players. Then, in the order determined by the cards, players spend their dice to add aliens here, to move aliens to the ship, to move aliens within the ship, exploring rooms, performing actions, using technologies and room effects in order to fulfill those missions. When you fulfill one of your missions, again, you turn your face up, you pay the cost, and now you add the number of points. And that applies whether it is your own mission or a general one. If at the end of your round you do not have a mission, you can draw a new one. If you don't like your own, you can also discard your old one and get a new one. And you continue like this until a player has scored enough points to end the game early. Otherwise, the game goes until the end of the last round. And at the point, the player with the highest score is the winner of the game. So the first thing to consider about this game is how little theme there is in it. The fact of rolling dice and then sharing them, dividing them in I cut, I split, I cut the cake and you choose first. What does that have to do with the theme? Absolutely nothing. I mean, I couldn't see any connection, but then maybe they're aliens. What do I know about their mysterious alien culture? Then performing the actions felt a little more thematic. I perform the action of moving and I move. I perform the action of training and I make some aliens available. But then what I'm doing on the board, again, feels so abstract. Yes, there's the title on those missions that try to get you a sense of what they may represent, but I'm trying to tie in 3 rooms, so to have exactly the same number of sculpts as you have. I'm trying to have more than you when you have at least 3. I'm trying to have less than you, etc., etc. It could be aliens, it could be beads on an abstract board. It wouldn't change much. So it feels very dry, very abstract. This being said, so the theme is not quite there, it's very flimsy, but the main mechanic seems pretty interesting to me. I mean, I like the idea of I cut and you choose. There are the games that are using this is not particularly innovative, it's not unheard of. Thieves Market by TMG came out maybe last year, I think, had a similar mechanic. A couple of years ago, there was a game called Piece of Cake. is not unheard of. And here is performed, is enacted competently. There's nothing wrong about the way this is done. There is an interesting challenge that you have when you are the player that is putting together the various pools of dice. The challenge, of course, of creating an offer which is not too good and not too bad, because if it's too good, you're gonna take it, and then I get stuck with whatever is left. If it's too bad and no one wants it, then I'm gonna get stuck with that one anyways. So you're trying to find that midway, so you're not gonna give too much or making offers that do not seem too attractive because you're hoping they don't take them, or you make offers that leave a lot of good stuff to you but you think are gonna be attractive to them. And also there's another element which to me is even more interesting than that, is the other element that plays into the value of an offer, which is the number on the card. Because going first or going second or going third and so on and so forth, going early or going later, has advantages and disadvantages. If I go first, I can use the technologies, and then boom, you don't have them anymore. And sometimes there's a technology that benefits me while blocking one for you. For example, I'm not going to let you get a new teleporter, so I see that you're not going to be able to go and reinforce quickly in certain areas that I get the impression you want to control. You're in an area full of contamination, then I take the vaccines, and then I force you to run away or to die. There is that advantage of going first, but going second or third, and in any case going later in the turn, has the huge advantage of knowing exactly what everybody else has done, and then you just play with numbers, or simply counting numbers, and you have 3 there, when I have 4, you have 2, and when I have 1, all depending on what I'm trying to, the missions that I'm trying to complete. And then it's just like crunching numbers, and it's not like big numbers, it's like 3, 4, 5, 2, 1, stuff like that. But the fact that it just feels like you're playing with numbers and not with aliens, not with anything else. It feels very dry, very, very abstract. This being said, there are dry, abstract games that are good, and this one is, I would say, not bad. Once again, I like that mechanic of splitting and making the offers, as long as in your group that doesn't lead to analysis paralysis. I don't know how I feel about the fact that when you accept an offer, you also get to choose another die, because then in a certain sense makes it a little more random. Now, you're choosing the die, so it's not random, but from my point of view, as I'm preparing the lot to offer to you, I get a sense of what you may get, but especially with a lot of players, that to me is almost imponderable what you're going to get. So in a certain sense, I'm trying my best to create a certain offer that has certain characteristics that are advantageous, and then you take some die, they're like, oh, okay, now the pool of dice works in a different way. And so if that happens a couple of times, then maybe I will try to obsess less, I will give less value to my making lots, because you're still gonna change the lot by taking a die or that I wouldn't want you to take. Just my impression is that the game could be a little bit better if it was tighter. That is, this is the offer, that's it, take or leave it, take it or dump it on me. But the person that accepts the offer didn't have the option of taking that die, and maybe we should just play that variant. But I don't know that we're gonna play this game very often in the future. I did not dislike it. I was playing the game. There wasn't a moment that I was bored or annoyed. I was interested in the decisions that I had to make, either as the player that makes the offers or one of the players that has to decide what to do with the offer. That was interesting stuff. And again, making sure that I have 5 aliens where you had 4, next to a room where there were 2 to complete certain missions that interested me. But also with the people I played it with, that was the same reaction. We didn't dislike it as we played the game. And when it was finished, we're like, okay, that was okay. That was interesting. Not bad. Nothing wrong with it. But no one felt like playing the game again. Like a competently cooked microwavable dinner, this game there's nothing wrong with it. It is even good. It's not exciting. It's not mouth-watering. If I were to grade it as a paper, it would be a solid B, not something that anybody disliked or loved. something that is like their average. In 1997, this game maybe would have blown my mind. In 2007, I was still thought, oh, this is so interesting. In 2017, we have games that, when it comes to playing with dice and manipulating effects, have more interesting social interaction. We come to games where it's about area control and majority or missions, variable powers. They do it better, and I would say either they do it more thematically or they do it with more levels of strategy. Here, clearly, in my opinion, they went for a game that they wanted to have to be thematic to some extent, but they also want it to be very simple and very accessible. That's my impression. And as a result, is a game that feels a little bland, a little too dry in that category. I do not know that the mechanic of the element of splitting the loot is enough to really give interest to the other element of the game that feels very perfunctory, very average again. Competently done, which is better than poorly done, but nothing above that. So again, to me, that was a game that was average. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, and again, I would say 10 years ago, a game that you didn't like and you didn't love was already better than many games out there, when you think that a lot of games out there were mass market games. But now we have so many excellent hobby games, then to be just okay for a game is not very appetizing. It's not nearly good enough. And this game is just okay, and that's the problem with it.